Edifier is throwing the kitchen sink at us and is really going for the title of best sounding noise cancelling wireless earbuds.
Namaste, we're DHRME, delivering high resolution, mesmerizing entertainment.
If we do say so ourselves. Now, these buds come in a very compact case, extremely pocketable, probably slightly on the thicker side, but totally acceptable, except if you're really skinny jeansing it, and if you are, why are you? It's 2024. The buds themselves are IP54 rated, as Edifier usually does. Very good rating against dust and reasonable rating against liquids with that 4. The battery numbers on these, Edifier advertises very weird numbers on their website, like 28 hours from the case with ANC off. So that really doesn't mean much to us. On the box, you do have more concrete numbers. And you know what? We're not sure what any of that means, so we went ahead and tested these. These have pretty high-end drivers, as you'll see, but these high-end drivers are also power hungry. So we got about 3.5 hours, just shy actually, 3 hours 27 minutes on LHDC with ANC on, and just above 4 hours, that's 4 hours and 6 minutes on aptX adaptive. So battery life numbers are just about average, probably below, but that's probably not why you're buying these earbuds. Now, the look is pretty cool. I must say these are one of Edifier's nicest looking buds. It's got a rounded yet angular look to it with a very sleek logo. They look quite subtle in your ear, but still stand out in some way. I like them anyway. But when you look at these buds for the first time, you look at those wide stems and you say, yes, Edifier's finally given us, swipe controls for volume. And no, you would be very disappointed because there are no swipe controls. These are only pinch or squeeze controls, and they work fairly well for the most part. The single squeeze isn't customizable. Only double and triple squeezes are customizable in the app, but I don't like double and triple squeezes, and I found it basically a bit hard to squeeze the buds. In fact, it was tough enough where if I sometimes squeeze too hard, it would affect the fit. Now, the app has a squeeze sensitivity setting. I don't know what it does. I played around with it quite a bit. I think best thing is to practice your squeezing instead of playing around with that slider, because in my view, it does not affect the squeezing too much. Practice your squeezes. I said squeeze too many times. Gotta have some water. Let's talk about comfort and fit, because these buds are super secure. Along with that IP54 rating, I would absolutely use these for workouts because they don't go anywhere once they're in your ear. And if it doesn't fit your ear, Edifier has gone all out here, just like the original NeoBuds Pro, with 8 sizes of tips in the box. So if you don't find a fit here, yeah, it's basically a you problem at this stage. In terms of comfort, it does stay sealed your ear, so you are going to feel it after a while, but it wasn't uncomfortable for me. I could use these for a couple of hours without any problems. Now, one of the things that's special about these buds is not just the sound, which we'll come to in a bit, but the fact that these are active noise cancelling buds. So how do they do? Well, to start off with, you have plenty of modes in the app. You have adaptive ANC, high, medium, and wind reduction. And the good thing is you can switch between these modes using just your pinching and squeezing. You can set up which modes to cycle through in the app. And I really like this feature. I think more companies should do this, because especially if you have a wind reduction feature and I don't know, you're on the bike or you're out and about, you're not going to pull out your phone, select wind reduction. So you just cycle through your buds and you get to wind reduction. So very happy about that. On the highest setting, which is high, these buds do a good job of cancelling noise. Not fantastic. A tier B, so it's not like the Boses and the Sonys or even, the earphones of the world, but across all frequencies, it's okay, it's fine. It doesn't shine in any single one though. The really high frequencies still seep in and they're actually more prominent. Think about things like plastic or leaves, dried leaves rustling. That kind of sound tends to stand out a little bit. So that might get a bit uncomfortable. On the other side, transparency, it's pretty decent transparency overall. Kevin and I had kind of a different take on this. Kevin thought that it kept all the frequencies very equal, but the volume was lower. Whereas I detected that there was an emphasis on certain frequencies, which made things sound nasal. What we did agree on though is that the overall volume does get a bit suppressed, which is probably the biggest knock on these buds. There is also no noticeable white noise, which is really nice. Now, even within transparency, Edifier wants to give you all the customization. You get either a voice enhancement setting, a balance setting, and a background sound setting. Not sure who'd use a background sound setting, filter out the voices and keep the background sounds. Sounds strange to me, but you have it. And also you have adaptive transparency, just like you have adaptive ANC. Now here are some samples so you can kind of see how these work. These are not going to be the same as using these in a 3D space, but just to get an idea of what the differences are.
High noise cancellation. Medium noise cancellation. Ambient sound.
Voice enhancement. Balanced. Background sound. These kind of earbuds aren't really meant for phone calls, or rather you're not buying these exclusively for phone calls, but I think it's nice to have, right? Like if you have buds in your ear which are really good for sound, you also want to be able to take calls. So as a nice to have, Edifier does talk a lot about their 3-mic AI enabled environmental noise suppression and Qualcomm aptX voice technology. Here are our popsicles, icicles in our test.
This is a windy test on my bike with the wind meter of the Edifier Stax Spirit S10. Popsicle, icicle, testing. 1, 2, 3. Popsicle, icicle, testing. 1, 2, 3. All right, a noisy test with cars in the background, and there's also road construction happening on the Edifier Stax Spirit S10. Popsicle, icicle, testing. 1, 2, 3. Popsicle, icicle, testing. 1, 2, 3.
So what do you guys think? I thought it worked pretty well. The voice was audible throughout in both conditions, noisy as well as windy. The only downside here was you could hear the noise. So you could hear the wind and you could hear the construction work going on in the background. Pretty usable. These are not the best buds for calling, but I would not hesitate to use them for a phone call. In terms of Fuckman controls, you can answer hang up with a single pinch like we've configured it, and you can double pinch on the left to decrease volume and double pinch on the right to increase volume. That worked. Changing ANC modes, however, did not work. There is no mute control as far as we can see. Extras. Now, before we come to the sound, let's talk about some of the extras because these aren't cheap buds. So you'd expect a few things, right? So you do get an in-ear sensor, which is nice. It's optical. It's quite decent. It worked well. There is a couple of things you can customize about it. What it exactly does. Fine. Works well. No complaints. Not a skin sensor, but who gives a crap, Apple? Went off script there. Now, there's no wireless charging. That is kind of a miss. For this price point, you would expect everything, and wireless charging we see even in much lower priced buds. You do get an 89 millisecond low latency mode. Very Edifier. And the biggest upgrade on the extras front is Edifier no longer uses Edifier Connect. That app that was quite awful in our view. It now uses Edifier Connects. Yeah, they've changed the spelling, but they've also changed the app. The app itself is much better. It doesn't have a whole mall inside the app, but it still nudges you to log in to protect your privacy, which, no, don't do that, Edifier. Come on, don't do that. It's ridiculous. You want to log in to give us some features, fine, but don't say that. Makes no sense. Anyway, you also get multi-point. Edifier clearly states in the app that you cannot get LDAC and LHDC with multi-point, but it kind of works for us. Strange. On my Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, I could enable LDAC, and on my Zenfone 9, I could have a Snapdragon. So maybe it means 2 LDACs no go, but 1 LDAC yes go. I don't know. It has multi-point. No device list in the app. Let's move on. We know what you're here for. Let's talk about sound. Edifier is throwing the kitchen sink at us and is really going for the title of best sounding noise cancelling wireless earbuds. All the codecs, LHDC 5.0, LDAC, aptX lossless, aptX adaptive, aptX voice, okay, that's something else, Snapdragon sound, AAC, SBC, Bluetooth 5.4, world's first planar magnetic true wireless wireless earbuds with active noise cancellation, 12mm modularized planar magnetic drivers offer uniform. Okay, all right, that's a lot of marketing. There's more stuff. I'm not reading all of that. Ultra thin diaphragm, 2 nanometers polymer substrate. Sure, very impressive, Edifier. You really have a lot of specs on this. Now, how do they sound? They're not the loudest, surprisingly. I could easily listen to these at full volume on my Samsung as well as my Asus, which I normally don't. I am a little bit deaf, but not that deaf. So surprisingly low volume, but it does sound very, very clean even at the max volume. Nice instrument separation, very clear sound, but it is very light on bass. We'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about the 3 tunings. But if you're coming into these thinking, oh, I want a bass monster, I want bass cannons, please go somewhere else. These are very, very light on bass. There's also one thing which I didn't like too much was the slight metallic nature on the treble. It affects voices as well sometimes, and it affects instruments like cymbals, hi-hats, things like that. But those are 2 nitpicks, and I'm doing that because it's like an expensive product. It didn't really check those boxes for me. But Edifier does give you 3 tunings, an original, a dynamic, and electrostatic. And for those of you who've seen our, the Stax Spirit S3 and S5 over-ear headphones reviews, this won't come as a surprise. This is what Edifier is doing now. I'm wondering what kind of people like that electrostatic tuning, because it's definitely not for me. Very high on the treble and very low on the bass. So I can imagine it works for certain kind of recordings, but yeah, so you do get those 3 tunings. Now, when I got these buds, I first wanted to compare them to these, the Hi-Fi Men's Swanar, because the Swanar are also in the similar league, right? They have better ANC and worse transparency than these, but actually the sound reminds me of this guy, the Bang & Olufsen X, which, to be clear, I prefer sound-wise. You also get a parametric EQ in the app, and I think that's nice. Edifier is trying to give you more customization for your sound. I could kind of get rid of that metallic timbre, but not completely, by bringing down the 8000 kilohertz bar and like with a wider Q factor. But overall, very good sounding buds. You get all the codecs, not much volume. The bass quality is really good. Quantity, not so much. So that's like the big picture of this. We are not audiophiles, so you have to listen to what we are saying with a grain of salt. But we do have measurements, and maybe that helps you in addition to our subjective experience. Now, this is $300. That's like a very hard pill to swallow. Not just because, the ANC ain't the best, or the transparency isn't great, or, none of those reasons, but this is a smaller company. I'm not sure how good the service will be in wherever you're located. And yeah, I know for audiophiles, $300 means nothing, because you usually have just earbuds, which don't even have any features. You can't even call with them or whatever for many times this price. So I guess for those people, they might want to consider this if they want to have a wireless option, which, fits their sound. But if you're a bass head, forget about it. And if you're looking for great ANC, transparency, swipe controls, etc., this offers none of that. Overall, good product. Not my kind of product, but hopefully this gives you guys a picture. Thanks a lot to Edifier for sending this out to us. That does not affect our review. As you saw, it was pretty much what we felt. We have nothing to gain from trying to sell you products.
Thanks to subscribers, watchers, likers, squeezers, patrons, and members. Do you know we have a second channel now where we talk about stuff that's not audio, or whatever catches our fancy? Go give it a subscribe.
We just hit 75,000 subs, onward to 100K before the end of this year. Maybe a bit ambitious, but tell your family and tell your friends to go subscribe to DHRME, DHRME Life. And a special thanks to our Fuck Montier supporters, Gamma Panda and Paula. You've been looking for a perfect 10, and we've been DHRME. Dewey.